Hey guys, tonight we are not venturing into the cold, damp ruins of Europe or the bustling markets of ancient China. No, tonight you are stepping into the heart of medieval West Africa, to the legendary Mali Empire. Perhaps sometime in the 14th century, during its golden age under the famed Mansa Musa, you might picture vast, undulating sand dunes, bustling trade routes snaking across the desert, and cities built of sun-baked mud brick, like Timbuktu or Janneh, and that picture wouldn't be wrong. But imagine this, a vibrant contrast within that landscape flourishing oases of deliberate greenery, lush gardens sustained by ingenuity, flourishing in the dry savanna and Sahel. These were the lost gardens of the Mali Empire, magnificent planned spaces that are largely invisible to us today, buried beneath centuries of sand and history. You probably won't survive this journey without feeling a surprising appreciation for ancient irrigation, and perhaps a sudden urge to find a nice, shady tree to escape the imagined heat. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always a delight to see how far these sleepy stories spread. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself transported back to medieval West Africa, a landscape dominated by the vast Niger River and its tributaries. This region encompasses diverse geographical zones: the Sahel, a semi-arid transitional zone just south of the Sahara Desert, and further south, the Sudanian savanna, characterized by grasslands, scattered trees, and a distinct rainy season followed by a long, intense dry season. The climate is often hot, sometimes intensely so, and water is a precious resource. The air here, in the dry season, often smells of sun-baked earth and dry grasses. Into this challenging environment, from roughly the 13th to the 17th centuries, flourished the Mali Empire. It was one of the largest and wealthiest empires in the world at its height. Renowned for its immense riches derived primarily from controlling the lucrative trans-Saharan trade in gold and salt. Its major cities, Niani the capital, Timbuktu, Gao, Janneh, were sophisticated centers of trade, scholarship, and culture, famed across Africa, the Middle East, and even Europe. And within these cities and around the royal compounds, alongside the grand mosques and scholarly universities built of mud brick, there existed something else: the lush, green jewels of the Mali Empire, magnificent gardens. This is often a surprising idea for those who picture West Africa as purely arid or wild grassland. These weren't natural oases springing forth unaided. These were human-created, meticulously managed spaces, deliberate pockets of verdant life flourishing against the backdrop of the savanna and Sahel. Sensory details: the warmth of the West African sun on your skin, the dry, dusty smell of the savanna. Then, the astonishing visual contrast of deep, vibrant green behind a palace wall or a courtyard gate, the subtle scent of rich, damp soil and blooming plants that don't belong in such a dry climate, the imagined sound of trickling water, carefully managed, providing life. These gardens were more than just pretty places. They were complex ecosystems designed for both beauty and utility, blending aesthetic pleasure with vital, practical functions. They were places of respite, of scholarly contemplation, of strategic food production, and certainly of immense prestige. The Mali Empire, flourishing in West Africa from approximately the 13th to the 17th centuries, was an expansive and exceptionally wealthy pre-colonial state, renowned for its immense gold and salt trade, its sophisticated urban centers like Timbuktu, and its existence within diverse geographical zones that included both semi-arid Sahel and expansive savanna regions, creating challenging environments for large-scale planned horticulture. This is our mainstream historical fact, setting the historical and geographical context for these gardens. The lost aspect of these gardens is significant. unlike monumental stone structures or enduring mud brick buildings. Gardens, particularly those requiring constant irrigation and human intervention in a dry climate, tend to disappear quickly if maintenance ceases. We don't have well-preserved, standing garden ruins in the way we might find in ancient Rome or Persia. Our understanding of them relies on historical accounts, often from Arab travelers like Ibn Battuta, oral traditions, and archaeological inferences, soil analysis, remnants of irrigation systems. A quirky tidbit about the Sahel environment and unexpected greenery involves the ability of certain local tree species to survive and even thrive in conditions that seem impossibly dry. Providing pockets of shade and food, imagine European visitors much later. Of course, being utterly bewildered by a solitary baobab tree standing majestically in a seemingly arid landscape, looking like a green giant defying the dryness. The Mali Gardens, in a way, extended this natural defiance through human ingenuity. There's joke number one. It's a desert out there, but don't worry. My palace has its own personal humidity dome, powered by very patient gardeners. Historians debate the precise extent and nature of planned green spaces and gardens within urban centers of the Mali Empire, particularly their scale and their distribution. Were they truly extensive? Covering significant portions of the inner cities and royal compounds as grand examples of urban landscaping, or were they primarily smaller, more functional plots, perhaps concentrated within specific elite residences or religious complexes, with less emphasis on sprawling aesthetic design compared to some later imperial gardens elsewhere? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to discern the exact scale and purpose of these green jewels. The existence of these gardens in such a challenging climate points to a high level of engineering and horticultural skill. They were not just natural accidents, they were deliberate creations, requiring immense effort and ingenious water management. Joke number two. You inspect a wilting plant. Right, more water, and perhaps a stern lecture about appreciating one's privileged existence in a royal garden. They were symbols of power, wealth, and the ability to command resources, transforming the landscape itself into a verdant statement. Joke number three. You look at a particularly dry patch of earth. This, my friends, is what happens when the royal gardener goes on holiday. You've imagined the surprising sight of lush gardens flourishing in the challenging West African savanna and Sahel, green jewels of the Mali Empire. These weren't mere accidents of nature, they were deliberate creations, sustained by ingenuity and immense resources. And central to this era of grand construction and verdant oases was arguably the most famous figure from the Mali Empire, a king whose name became synonymous with unimaginable wealth, a monarch whose influence literally rippled across continents. Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa, whose full name was Musa Keita, ruled the Mali Empire from approximately 1312 to 1337 CE. He presided over the empire at its golden age, a period of unprecedented power, stability, and wealth. The Mali Empire, as we discussed in Section 1, was vast and rich, primarily deriving its immense wealth from controlling the trans-Saharan trade routes, particularly the lucrative exchange of gold from the West African goldfields and salt from Saharan mines. This trade brought staggering riches into the imperial coffers. Mansa Musa's wealth was truly legendary, even by medieval global standards. Accounts from contemporary Arab chroniclers and later European sources describe riches that seem fantastical. His name became known across North Africa, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe due to one astonishing event: his pilgrimage to Mecca. In 1324, Mansa Musa embarked on his famous Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, a demonstration of his devout faith as a Muslim ruler. But this was no ordinary pilgrimage. It was a spectacle of unparalleled scale and extravagance that cemented his legend and brought the immense wealth of Mali to the attention of the wider world. Imagine a caravan of truly biblical proportions. Sources describe thousands of people in his entourage: servants, soldiers, officials, entertainers, and personal attendants. And crucial to his legend, thousands upon thousands of camels and horses, each laden with gold. Some accounts claim he brought so much gold that 100 camels each carried hundreds of pounds of the precious metal. Sensory details the visual of shimmering gold glinting under the desert sun. The rhythmic shuffle and immense sound of thousands of camels and people moving across the sand. The constant, dry smell of desert dust, the palpable aura of immense wealth and power, as his caravan passed through Cairo, Egypt. Mansa Musa reportedly distributed so much gold in gifts and purchases that he caused a significant and widespread devaluation of gold in the Egyptian market for several years, as the sudden influx of the precious metal disrupted its value. This economic ripple effect astounded contemporary observers and firmly placed Mali on the maps and in the minds of scholars and merchants across Eurasia. The awe and astonishment of those who witnessed his procession or felt its economic impact were profound. Mansa Musa, who reigned as Emperor Mansa of the Mali Empire in West Africa during the 14th century, achieved legendary renown across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe for his immense personal and imperial wealth, primarily derived from controlling the trans-Saharan gold and salt trade, famously demonstrated by his extravagant pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, which enabled his extensive patronage of grand architectural projects, scholarly pursuits, and urban development. This is our mainstream historical fact. Solidifying his status as the Golden King and Grand Patron, Mansa Musa's immense wealth wasn't just hoarded, it was largely invested back into his empire. Contributing to its development and prestige, he was a prodigious patron of architecture, scholarship, and urban development. He commissioned the building of new mosques and grand public buildings in cities like Timbuktu and Gao. He encouraged and supported Islamic scholarship, attracting scholars, poets, and artists to his empire, establishing universities and libraries that became centers of learning. This patronage served multiple purposes. It was an expression of his devout religious piety. Especially after his Hajj, it enhanced the prestige and reputation of the Mali Empire on the global stage. Demonstrating its power and sophistication, it supported the flourishing of scholarship and intellectual life within his realm, and, crucially for our story, it also enabled the creation and maintenance of grand, beautiful, and sometimes functional gardens within the palace compounds and urban centers. His wealth and vision provided the resources, the labor, the water management systems, the ability to acquire diverse plant species, necessary to bring these verdant oases to life in a challenging climate. A quirky tidbit from his Hajj involves a less famous, but equally extravagant, gesture. Some accounts state that Mansa Musa was so generous that he actually built a mosque every Friday along his long pilgrimage route, simply as an act of piety. While this might be an exaggeration, it highlights the sheer scale of his resources and his commitment to religious patronage. Imagine trying to explain that to your travel agent. There's joke number 1. Just built a mosque on my way to Mecca. What did you do on your holiday? Historians debate the verifiable accuracy of Mansa Musa's legendary levels of wealth, particularly the more astonishing claims like his impact on the gold market in Cairo. While he was undoubtedly one of the wealthiest rulers of his time, how much of these accounts are factual historical records? And how much are embellished oral traditions or awestruck interpretations by foreign observers seeking to impress their own rulers? Historians also debate the primary motivations behind his extensive architectural and scholarly patronage. Was it first and foremost an act of genuine religious piety, or a strategic political display of imperial power and legitimacy on the global stage? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, grappling with the nuances of his immense legacy. Mansa Musa, the Golden King, transformed his immense wealth into tangible expressions of imperial power, cultural flourishing, and religious devotion. Joke number 2. You imagine him having a money bin like Scrooge McDuck, but filled with actual gold dust. His vast resources and his vision as a grand patron were essential to creating the lost gardens of the Mali Empire. turning dry landscapes into lush havens. Joke number 3. You hear a courtier whispering, "The Sultan's new garden is lovely, but the all-gold gravel is a bit much." You've learned about Mansa Musa, the legendary golden king of the Mali Empire, whose immense wealth and extensive patronage funded grand mosques, universities, and flourishing cities across West Africa. And among his many projects were the creation of magnificent green oases that were not primarily for practical food production, but for delight. These were the palace pleasure gardens, meticulously designed to offer beauty, tranquility, and a luxurious respite for the elite within the bustling urban centers and the hot savanna environment. Imagine stepping from the dusty, sun-baked streets of a Mali city, perhaps Niani or Timbuktu, through a grand gateway, and suddenly finding yourself in an entirely different world. You're in a private garden within a royal compound or a wealthy official's residence. The immediate sensation is one of profound contrast. The air feels cooler, heavy with the scent of damp earth and fragrant blossoms. A stark relief from the dry heat outside. The sounds of the city, distant voices. The murmur of the market are muffled, replaced by the gentle murmur of water and the rustling of leaves. Sensory details the profound feeling of coolness and relief from the heat. The rich, sweet scent of diverse flowers and damp soil. The gentle sound of trickling water from channels or fountains. The visual explosion of vibrant green plants and colorful blossoms against the dry landscape outside. These pleasure gardens were carefully designed, planned spaces, reflecting an aesthetic appreciation for nature's beauty. Even in a challenging climate, they would feature lush greenery, shade trees with broad canopies, flowering shrubs, and meticulously cultivated flower beds. Paved walkways, often made of stone or fine-packed earth, would wind through the various sections, inviting leisurely strolls. Small pavilions or shaded seating areas, perhaps adorned with intricate textiles, would offer comfortable spots for repose and contemplation. Water was a central, indispensable element in these gardens, while often primarily aesthetic. Water features also served a practical cooling purpose through evaporation. You would find intricate irrigation channels guiding water to every plant, ensuring their vitality. There might be small fountains, gently splashing into serene pools, creating soothing sounds and reflecting the sky. The presence of abundant, managed water in such an arid region was itself a powerful symbol of wealth and control over nature. The primary purpose of these gardens was indeed pleasure and tranquility. They were spaces for leisurely strolls, quiet contemplation, reading, or enjoying music and poetry. They served as private retreats for the royal family and high-ranking elite. A serene escape from the rigors of court life and the heat of the day. They were also used for entertaining select, honored guests in a beautiful and luxurious setting. A further demonstration of the host's immense resources and sophistication, royal and elite pleasure gardens in wealthy West African empires like Mali, featuring lush greenery, shade trees, fragrant flowers, and often intricate water features like channels and pools, were meticulously designed and maintained spaces. They offered beauty, tranquility, and a cool respite from the heat, while also serving as powerful symbols of prestige, wealth, and command over valuable resources like water. This is our mainstream historical fact. Highlighting their role and characteristics, maintaining such vibrant green oases in a climate where water was a constant concern required significant resources and skilled labor. Large teams of gardeners would have been employed to ensure constant irrigation, weeding, pruning, and the overall health and beauty of the plants. The water management systems to bring water consistently to these gardens were a marvel of ancient engineering. A topic we'll explore in detail soon. A quirky tidbit about these pleasure gardens might involve specific, unusual plants grown purely for their aesthetic qualities or strange decorative elements, while fruit trees and shade trees like mango, baobab, tamarind, fig would have been common, Some gardens might have featured rare flowering plants imported from distant regions, or particularly fragrant varieties cultivated solely for their scent. Imagine a garden with a very specific, unusual type of water lily cultivated in a pool for its beauty, reflecting exotic tastes. There's joke number one. My lord's new garden features a rare, non-edible, extremely difficult to grow flower. It's very prestigious and very thirsty. Historians debate the primary purpose aesthetic pleasure versus practical utility and symbolic display, and the main design influences indigenous West African aesthetic principles versus inspiration from Islamic garden traditions of North Africa or the Middle East of royal pleasure gardens in the Mali Empire. Were they mainly beautiful places for contemplation? Or did their existence primarily function as a statement of wealth and power? Was their layout and symbolism influenced by formal Persian or Mamluk garden designs? Or did they evolve from local West African concepts of managed natural beauty? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, delving into the cultural and functional nuances of their design. Palace pleasure gardens were vibrant, meticulously crafted symbols of imperial power and wealth, transforming parts of the urban landscape into verdant havens. Joke number two. You stroll through a shaded walkway? Ah, this is the life. No dust, no noise, just expensive tranquility. They demonstrated the Mali ruler's ability to command resources and create beauty, even in a challenging environment. Joke number three. You imagine the emperor admiring his gardens. My gardens are so beautiful. Even the desert is jealous. Probably. These serene havens served as a powerful counterpoint to the more practical aspects of the empire, setting the stage for us to look at gardens designed for sustenance. Mansa Musa's immense wealth enabled the creation of magnificent palace pleasure gardens, oases of beauty and tranquility designed for delight and prestige within the bustling urban centers of the Mali Empire. But not all gardens in this powerful West African state were purely for aesthetic enjoyment. Many, perhaps most, especially those connected to urban centers and royal compounds, served vital practical purposes, forming the literal backbone of sustenance for palace inhabitants and urban populations. These were the gardens for sustenance, carefully cultivated to provide food, medicinal plants, and other essential resources. Imagine these gardens. While a pleasure garden might feature winding paths and ornamental fountains, a garden for sustenance would be laid out more pragmatically. You'd see rows of carefully tilled earth, neatly defined beds, and intricate networks of irrigation channels. The focus here was on productivity and reliability, on yielding a consistent harvest from a confined space. Sensory details the smell of rich, damp earth after watering, contrasting with the dry dust outside, the visual of orderly rows of green plants, the sounds of gentle trickling water in channels, the feel of warm, fertile soil between your fingers. The primary purpose of these gardens was, of course, food supply. In cities like Niani, Timbuktu, or Gao, with large populations to feed, urban agriculture was crucial for supplementing the broader agricultural economy of the surrounding countryside. These gardens would produce a diverse array of food crops, various grains like fonio, millet, or sorghum, beans, leafy greens, root vegetables such as yams and sweet potatoes, and fruits like mangoes, dates, figs, or bananas from warmer regions for the royal court and high officials. These gardens provided a secure and diverse source of fresh produce, ensuring a varied diet and reducing reliance on distant farms. Beyond basic sustenance, many of these gardens specialized in medicinal plants. Traditional West African medicine was highly sophisticated, relying heavily on botanical knowledge. Gardens attached to palaces. Scholarly centers like those in Timbuktu or wealthy households would cultivate a wide range of herbs and plants known for their healing properties. These provided essential ingredients for local healers, herbalists, And for the general well-being of the court and elite, imagine rows of strange and familiar herbs, each with its specific healing purpose, filling the air with their distinctive aromas. These gardens also provided other essential resources. Certain plants might be grown for their fibers, used in textiles or rope making. Dyes, derived from specific plant parts, could be cultivated here. Specific types of wood for tools. Construction or crafts might be grown as managed resources. Even fodder for valuable animals kept within city walls could be cultivated in specialized plots. They were living pantries and workshops. Beyond aesthetic pleasure gardens, many gardens in the Mali Empire, particularly within urban centers and royal compounds, served vital functional purposes. These included cultivating diverse food crops grains, vegetables, fruits, growing essential medicinal plants for health, and providing other crucial resources like fibers or dyes, thereby supplementing the broader agricultural economy and ensuring a diverse and reliable supply for courtly and urban populations. This is our mainstream historical fact, detailing their practical contributions. The productivity of these gardens in what could be a challenging climate relied entirely on sophisticated water management systems, a topic we'll explore in detail in the next section. Skilled gardeners and water managers were essential to their success, ensuring that every drop of precious water was utilized efficiently. A quirky tidbit about these functional gardens involves specific, sometimes unusual, food crops that might have been cultivated or strange methods used for their productivity. Some sources suggest cultivation of specific drought-resistant tubers or leafy greens that could provide nutrition even in harsh dry seasons, or the integration of specific animal husbandry like small, controlled insect farms within the garden for protein or pest control. Imagine a gardener carefully tending a bed of edible grubs. There's joke number one. Our royal gardens produce the finest mangoes, the freshest herbs, and a surprisingly plump beetle, all very nutritious. Historians debate the economic significance and overall scale of food production from urban gardens within the Mali Empire cities, while clearly important for the court and elite households. How significant was their total contribution to feeding the broader urban population compared to imported foodstuffs from surrounding rural agricultural areas? Were they primarily a luxurious supplement for the wealthy, or did they play a more critical role in urban food security for a wider range of inhabitants? Especially during times of disruption. This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand their broader economic impact and accessibility. These gardens for sustenance were crucial, productive spaces, vital for supporting the empire's population and its elite. They showcase not just the wealth of the Mali Empire, but its ingenuity in making challenging landscapes yield essential resources. Joke number two. You admire a perfectly irrigated bed of spinach. This isn't just a vegetable, this is a triumph of ancient engineering. They were silent witnesses to the ingenuity of the Mali people in harnessing their environment to provide for themselves. Joke number three. You imagine a royal gardener complaining. Another day, another mile of irrigation channels to clean. My back hurts just thinking about the emperor's preference for fresh kale. You've seen the Mali Empire's green jewels, the palace pleasure gardens for delight, and the sustenance gardens for food and medicine. But maintaining such vibrant, lush pockets of life in the West African savanna and Sahel, a region often characterized by its dry heat and long, intense dry seasons, required more than just fertile soil and willing hands. It required the very essence of life itself, carefully managed and delivered water. This brings us to the watering genius of the Mali Empire's ingenious irrigation systems. The challenge was clear: how do you keep extensive gardens, filled with diverse flora, alive and thriving in a climate where natural rainfall is seasonal and often insufficient for continuous growth, and where the sun can be relentless? The answer lay in harnessing the available water sources and directing them with remarkable precision to where they were needed. The primary water source for these gardens was undoubtedly the great Niger River and its numerous tributaries. which provided a reliable, if sometimes seasonally fluctuating, supply of water. Seasonal rainfall during the wet season was also collected. Malian engineers and horticulturists developed and maintained sophisticated water management systems. One of the most fundamental techniques involved constructing networks of irrigation canals and channels. These would divert water directly from rivers or from large wells, carrying it across the land to the garden plots. These channels could be simple earthworks, or sometimes lined with stone or packed clay to prevent seepage and minimize water loss through evaporation. You can imagine the cool, damp earth lining these channels, the gentle sound of water trickling along them, bringing life to the plants. Sensory details the faint sound of flowing or trickling water, the smell of damp earth in a dry landscape, the visual of green channels snaking through the garden, the feeling of moisture in the air near the water. To lift water from rivers or deep wells up into these channels, various types of water lifting devices were employed. The shadoof, a simple human-powered lever system with a bucket on one end and a counterweight on the other, was common across ancient agricultural societies and likely used here. A single person could operate a shadoof to lift water from a river or well into a higher channel or basin. For larger-scale operations, sakyas, also known as Persian wheels, animal-powered water wheels that used a series of pots or buckets on a continuous chain to draw water from a well or river, would have been utilized. Imagine the rhythmic creak of the sakya, the splash of water as it's lifted, powered by a patient ox or donkey, a constant sound in the background of a working garden. Sensory details the rhythmic creak and groan of a sakya, the splash of water as buckets are emptied, the feel of the rope or lever of a shadoof, the visual of the animal slowly turning the wheel. Beyond active irrigation, other techniques helped manage water. Some gardens might have employed terracing on gentle slopes, creating stepped plots that helped retain water and prevent runoff and erosion, ensuring that precious rainfall or irrigation water soaked into the soil rather than running off. Cisterns and reservoirs, often underground, would have been constructed to store rainwater collected during the wet season or excess river water, providing a crucial reserve during the long, dry months. The skill and knowledge required for this water management were immense. It demanded an understanding of hydrology, how water flows, surveying to lay out canals with the correct gradient, and engineering to build and maintain water-lifting devices and storage facilities. Managing water distribution fairly among different plots and users would also have been a crucial administrative task. The labor involved in building and maintaining these complex irrigation systems was substantial. Digging and lining canals, constructing shadoofs and sakyas, and constantly operating them to ensure the gardens received enough water was a continuous process requiring many dedicated individuals. The flourishing of elaborate gardens in the Mali Empire's savanna and Sahel regions relied fundamentally on ingenious and sophisticated water management systems. These included extensive networks of irrigation canals, diverting water from the Niger River or large wells, and various human or animal-powered water-lifting devices like shadufs and sakyas, meticulously operated to bring essential water to garden plots in a challenging, arid climate. This is our mainstream historical fact, detailing the core of their watering genius. A quirky tidbit about Malian water management involves specific, perhaps unusual, methods for reducing evaporation or unique designs for water features that also served practical purposes. Some sources hint at sophisticated techniques for minimizing water loss from open channels, perhaps using specific linings or covering them in certain areas, or perhaps unique designs for pools or small fountains that served both aesthetic purposes in pleasure gardens and helped aerate or circulate water for irrigation in a more efficient way. Imagine a garden with a series of small, interconnected pools that subtly filtered the water as it flowed through. There's joke number one. My lord's irrigation system is so ingenious. It makes the desert slightly less deserty. Maybe. Historians debate the precise scale and technological sophistication of irrigation systems specifically used for gardens in the Mali Empire's urban centers. Were these primarily smaller, individual systems designed for specific palace courtyards or wealthy residences? Or did some cities or royal complexes maintain more extensive, interlinked urban networks of canals and water lifting devices that served larger planned green spaces collectively? Historians also question how these systems compared in technological advancement to contemporary irrigation practices in other major empires of the period, such as in the Middle East or North Africa. This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand the exact scope and engineering level of their ancient water management. The ingenious irrigation systems were the critical factor enabling Mali's magnificent gardens, transforming dry landscapes into verdant oases. Joke number 2. You inspect a channel. This isn't just a ditch, this is a lifeline. Also, it's a ditch. They stand as a testament to the Malians' deep understanding of water and their impressive engineering capabilities in a challenging environment. Joke number 3. You imagine a modern plumber seeing their system. So, no pipes, just a giant stick and a bucket. Fascinating. You've marveled at the watering genius of the Mali Empire, seeing how ingenious irrigation systems like canals, shadoufs, and sakayas brought life to gardens in the savannah and Sahel, meticulously distributing precious water. But these systems, however clever, needed water to distribute, and in a climate where the rainy season is distinct and often short, and the dry season long and intense. Ensuring a continuous supply of water required robust primary sources and effective storage infrastructure. This brings us to the essential water infrastructure that truly sustained imperial gardens' wells, cisterns, and potentially even aqueducts. Maintaining a thriving garden in a semi-arid region means securing a reliable water supply year-round, not just during the wet season. This led the Malians to develop and maintain a network of different water sources and storage solutions, all interconnected to ensure the gardens received continuous nourishment. Wells were undoubtedly a primary source of water, particularly for gardens located away from the immediate banks of the Niger River. Tapping into groundwater was crucial for a consistent supply. These wells could be quite deep, dug down to the water table, and often lined with stone or clay to prevent collapse and maintain water purity. Water would be drawn from these wells manually, using buckets on ropes, or more efficiently with human-powered shadoufs or animal-powered sakiyas, those water wheels we discussed in the last section, which often lifted water from wells into channels. Imagine the constant, rhythmic sound of water being drawn up from the cool depths of a well, a vital sound in a thirsty land. Sensory details the cool, damp air emanating from a well shaft, the visual of clear, cool water rising from the dark depths, the sound of ropes creaking or buckets splashing. Cisterns and reservoirs played a vital role in collecting and storing water, especially rainwater collected during the wet season, or sometimes river water diverted for storage. These structures were often underground, dug into the earth and meticulously lined with clay, stone, or plaster to prevent seepage and minimize evaporation. They could be quite large, designed to hold significant quantities of water to serve as crucial reserves during the long dry months. Rainwater would be channeled from rooftops of nearby buildings or from paved courtyards into these underground storage tanks. Sensory details the cool, damp smell of an underground cistern, the visual of still, dark water reflecting the small opening above, the quiet sound of dripping water in the cool, still air inside. While less commonly associated with the Mali Empire than with, say, the Roman Empire, the concept of aqueducts, structures designed to convey water over distances, might also have played a role for larger urban gardens or complexes that needed water from a distant or elevated source. These could be simple open channels carved into the earth, or more sophisticated covered conduits, subtly designed to maintain a gentle slope and allow water to flow by gravity from a river or a distant spring directly to the gardens. These would require careful surveying and engineering to ensure a consistent flow. The interconnectedness of these systems was key. Wells might feed a local network of small channels. Cisterns would supplement the supply during the dry season. Larger canals from the river, as discussed in Section 5, would provide the main bulk of water. But these complementary sources and storage methods ensured resilience against droughts or fluctuations in river levels. Maintaining this water infrastructure was an ongoing task. Wells needed to be kept clean and functional. Cisterns had to be regularly inspected for leaks and cleaned of sediment. Canals needed to be cleared of silt and vegetation to ensure water flowed freely. These systems were vulnerable to damage from floods, erosion, or simply neglect, and their constant functionality was paramount for the survival of the gardens, sustaining the flourishing gardens of the Mali Empire, particularly in its urban centers and royal compounds situated in challenging savanna and Sahel regions. Relied fundamentally on sophisticated water infrastructure. This included networks of wells tapping into groundwater, large cisterns and reservoirs for collecting and storing rainwater, or diverted river water, and potentially aqueducts to convey water, all ensuring a continuous and resilient supply throughout long dry seasons. This is our mainstream historical fact, detailing the comprehensive water supply system. A quirky tidbit about this water infrastructure involves specific, unusual design features of wells or cisterns, or anecdotes about water management. Some wells might have featured specific architectural elements around their openings, perhaps to collect dew or make access easier. There are historical accounts of ingenious methods for water purification, perhaps through filtering systems using sand and gravel, or perhaps a specific, memorable anecdote about a chief or gardener who successfully navigated a prolonged drought through particularly shrewd water management, becoming a local legend for their ability to keep the gardens green. Imagine a gardener who could tell the future of the garden simply by listening to the subtle sounds of the well. There's joke number 1. My well provides water that is perfectly pure, perfectly cool, and occasionally sings the national anthem. Historians debate the relative importance of groundwater accessed via wells versus collected surface water from cisterns or through aqueducts from rivers in consistently supplying Mali Empire gardens. Especially during the peak of the dry season, was reliance primarily on deep wells for year-round consistency, or were the vast riverine systems the main source? With storage supplementing them, historians also question the sophistication and effectiveness of methods for purifying or filtering water in these storage systems. How clean was the water delivered to gardens and for other uses? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand the precise balance of sources and the level of water quality management. These wells, cisterns, and potential aqueducts were the unseen but critical foundation of the Mali Empire's green jewels. They were a testament to meticulous planning, impressive engineering, and adaptation to the challenging environment, ensuring the gardens could flourish even in the driest times. Joke number 2. You check a cistern. All right, enough water here to keep the Emperor's roses happy for another month, and maybe a small bath for me. They represent the enduring ingenuity of ancient African societies in managing precious resources. Joke number 3. You imagine trying to explain their water system to a modern utility company. So, no pumps, just a giant stick and a very patient cow. Fascinating. You've explored the watering genius of the Mali Empire, seeing how ingenious irrigation systems, including canals, shadufs, sakias, wells, cisterns, and potentially even aqueducts, brought essential water to gardens in the Savannah and Sahel. This sophisticated infrastructure created the very possibility for lush green spaces to flourish. But what exactly was growing in these verdant oases? This brings us to the diverse flora cultivated the rich variety of local and perhaps exotic plant species that filled these ancient gardens. Malian gardens were not monocultures. They were biodiverse environments, cultivating a wide array of plants selected for their utility, beauty, or symbolic significance. This included a crucial mix of local, indigenous species that were well adapted to the West African environment, and, potentially, some exotic plants acquired through the empire's extensive trade networks. Among the local plants, food crops were paramount, particularly in the sustenance gardens. These included essential grains like fonio, millet, and sorghum, providing staple foods, various legumes, beans, leafy greens, and root vegetables such as yams and sweet potatoes would also be cultivated, ensuring a varied diet for the court and urban populations. Fruit trees were also vital, offering both sustenance and shade. Common local fruit trees would include mangoes, dates, figs, tamarind, and perhaps even baobab trees grown from seed, providing shade and unique fruit depending on the specific location and microclimate of the garden. Sensory details the visual of varied green plants, broad leaves, slender stalks, different shades of green, the smell of earthy vegetables and ripe fruit, the feel of warm, fertile soil. Medicinal plants formed a crucial category within these gardens. Traditional West African medicine, highly sophisticated and passed down through generations of healers, relied heavily on botanical knowledge. Gardens attached to palaces, wealthy residences, or scholarly centers like Timbuktu would cultivate a wide range of local herbs, roots, leaves, and barks known for their healing properties. These provided essential ingredients for remedies, treatments, and general well-being. Imagine rows of specific, fragrant herbs, each with its unique aroma, cultivated for its specific medicinal purpose. Beyond food and medicine, local plants provided other essential resources. Some plants would be cultivated for their fibers, used in textiles, rope making, or basketry. Others might yield natural dyes for coloring fabrics. Specific types of trees or shrubs might be grown for their wood, used for tools, construction, or crafts. These gardens were miniature, managed ecosystems providing a range of vital materials. The idea of exotic plants in Mali's gardens is intriguing, though harder to verify definitively, given the empire's vast wealth and its extensive trans-Saharan trade networks connecting to North Africa, the Middle East, and potentially coastal connections. It's plausible that rare or prized non-native species could have been acquired. This might include specific spices, ornamental flowers from distant lands that could survive in the climate, or other prized non-native flora valued for their rarity, beauty, or unique properties. The successful cultivation of such exotic species would have been a further display of imperial power and resources. The purpose of this diverse flora was multifaceted food security, medicinal supply, aesthetic beauty especially in pleasure gardens, scholarly interest for botanists, healers or curious minds, and a powerful display of imperial wealth, sophistication, and command over nature itself. A quirky tidbit about Malian gardens involves specific, sometimes unusual, local plants with unique properties or uses that might have been cultivated. Some sources hint at plants with highly aromatic leaves used for perfumes or insect repellents, or specific sacred trees cultivated within palace grounds not just for shade, but for their spiritual significance. Imagine a garden with a tree whose leaves, when crushed, released a potent, mind-altering fragrance used in specific rituals. There's joke number one. This particular tree. Oh, it's very important. It's the makes the emperor feel extra wise tree. Very subtle. The gardens of the Mali Empire cultivated a rich diversity of flora, including essential local food crops such as grains like fonio, various vegetables, and indigenous fruits, a wide array of native medicinal plants for traditional healing, and various indigenous shade trees crucial for comfort. These indigenous species were potentially supplemented by exotic plant species acquired through the empire's extensive trans-Saharan trade networks, further enhancing their biodiversity and prestige. This is our mainstream historical fact. Detailing the plant diversity, historians debate the precise composition of Malay Empire gardens, particularly the actual proportion of ornamental plants versus utilitarian food. medicinal, or resource-providing flora in both royal and urban contexts. Were pleasure gardens primarily aesthetic, with utility being secondary, or did all gardens, even seemingly ornamental ones, have a practical side? Historians also debate the actual success and scale of efforts in introducing and sustaining truly exotic, non-indigenous plant species in the challenging Sahel and savanna climate. Was it a widespread practice, or limited to very few, highly pampered specimens? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand the balance between beauty and function and the success of horticultural imports. The diverse flora cultivated in these ancient gardens was a testament to the Malians' deep knowledge of their local environment and their ambition to control and enrich it. Joke number 2. You pick a particularly fragrant herb. This doesn't just smell good, it probably cures, like 3 different diseases. They were not just green spaces, they were living pantries, pharmacies, and symbols of imperial power, all nourished by ingenious water management. Joke number 3. You look at a strange plant. I bet this one's either incredibly useful or incredibly poisonous. Probably both. You've explored the amazing diversity of flora cultivated in the gardens of the Mali Empire, a vibrant mix of local food crops, medicinal plants, and possibly exotic species, all nourished by ingenious water management systems like canals, wells, and sakias. But all that sophisticated infrastructure and diverse plant life wouldn't matter without the dedicated hands and profound knowledge of the people who tended them. This brings us to the gardener's patient labor, the skilled and constant work required to maintain these verdant oases in a challenging climate. These lush gardens, whether the aesthetic pleasure gardens or the functional sustenance plots, did not maintain themselves. They required constant, meticulous care, day after day, through sun and sometimes through the occasional dust storm. This was a demanding, full-time profession for those who tended imperial or noble gardens, involving a range of specific tasks that were crucial for the plant's survival and productivity. The most constant task was, naturally, watering, even with sophisticated irrigation systems. Water had to be managed and applied. Gardeners would spend hours ensuring that every plant received sufficient water, directing flow through channels, operating shadufs or sakias, and perhaps manually carrying water to specific, delicate plants. Imagine the rhythm of the shaduf, lifting water from a channel to a higher bed. Day after day, in the heat, sensory details the persistent sound of trickling water, the feel of cool, damp earth from recent watering, the visual of plants responding to moisture. Weeding was another relentless battle. Unwanted plants would constantly try to compete with cultivated flora for precious water, nutrients, and sunlight. Gardeners would meticulously remove weeds by hand or with simple tools, ensuring the valuable crops and ornamental plants could thrive. This was often back-breaking work, requiring patience and a keen eye. Pruning and training plants was essential for maximizing yield in functional gardens and maintaining aesthetic shapes in pleasure gardens. Gardeners would prune fruit trees to encourage more fruit production, or shape flowering shrubs for visual appeal. They might train climbing plants along trellises or supports. Soil care was fundamental. The fertility of the soil needed to be managed, especially in continuously cultivated beds. Gardeners would amend the soil with composted plant matter, animal manure from palace livestock, or other organic materials to replenish nutrients. They might also practice mulching, covering the soil surface with organic material to retain moisture and suppress weeds. Sensory details the earthy smell of rich, fertilized soil, the feel of turning over damp. Healthy earth. Pest control was largely manual and knowledge-based. Gardeners would meticulously inspect plants for insects or signs of disease, manually removing pests, or using traditional deterrents derived from specific plants. They were keen observers of natural ecosystems, understanding how to maintain a healthy balance beyond these routine tasks. There was the seasonal work preparing beds for new planting, transplanting seedlings, and, of course, the careful harvesting of fruits, vegetables, grains, or medicinal plants when they were ripe. This required knowledge of each plant's specific needs and life cycle. The knowledge required by these gardeners was profound. They possessed a deep understanding of local botany and horticulture. Knowing the needs of each plant species, they were experts in water management, understanding how to build and maintain irrigation systems and apply water efficiently. They knew about soil science, pest control, and plant propagation. This knowledge was practical, empirical, and likely passed down through generations of gardeners. The scale of the labor force for imperial or large noble gardens would have been significant, potentially involving large teams of dedicated individuals. Working under a master gardener? The constant vigilance required was immense. A moment's neglect of watering in the dry season could lead to rapid wilting and loss. The flourishing and continuous maintenance of the Mali Empire's lush and diverse gardens, particularly in its challenging savanna and Sahel environments, relied fundamentally on constant, meticulous, and skilled labor from dedicated gardeners. Their daily duties encompassed intricate irrigation management, relentless weeding, precise pruning and shaping, thoughtful soil care, and manual pest control, all requiring deep horticultural knowledge. This is our mainstream historical fact, highlighting the human effort. A quirky tidbit about Malian gardeners involves specific, perhaps unusual, tools or methods. Some sources hint at very specialized digging sticks or hoes designed for particular soil types or crops. There might also be anecdotal accounts of unique ways to shade young plants in the intense sun. Perhaps using specific woven mats or even other plants as living shade structures. Imagine a gardener using a very particular type of hoe whose design had been passed down for centuries, believed to be the perfect tool for the Malian soil. There's joke number one. This isn't just a digging stick, it's a centuries-old heirloom. It has very specific feelings about being used for weeding. Historians debate the typical social status and precise labor organization of gardeners working in the Mali Empire's imperial and elite gardens. Were they primarily free laborers, skilled artisans, or were they often enslaved individuals compelled to perform this demanding work? What was the hierarchy within the gardening staff? Historians also question how specialized their horticultural knowledge transmission was. Was it passed down through specific family lines, guild-like structures, or through a more informal apprenticeship system within the palace? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to understand the human element behind these green masterpieces. The patient labor of these gardeners transformed the potential of the land and water into vibrant reality. Joke number two. You watch a gardener carefully pruning a small tree, just shaping the empire, one leaf at a time. It was a constant grind, but one that created beauty, sustenance, and a powerful statement of imperial power. Joke number three. You imagine a gardener trying to explain their job to a modern urban dweller? Yes, I cultivate plants. No, I don't just water them and hope. It's a precise, endless battle against nature. My lord, you've explored the diverse flora cultivated in the gardens of the Mali Empire, from local food crops and medicinal plants to potentially exotic species, all sustained by ingenious water management and the patient labor of skilled gardeners. But here's the thing, while we can imagine these lush oases based on historical accounts, they are, for the most part, lost gardens? The question then becomes, how do we know they existed? How does modern science hint at the physical evidence of these vibrant green spaces in a landscape that has shifted and changed over centuries? The answer lies in the persistent work of archaeology. Unlike monumental stone structures that endure for millennia like Great Zimbabwe's walls. For instance, gardens, especially those relying on perishable organic materials plants, mud brick channels, wooden structures, and constant maintenance in a challenging savanna and Sahel climate. Tend to disappear if left untended. Centuries of windblown sand, seasonal rains, later human activity, and the natural cycle of decay have largely covered or obliterated direct, visible evidence of these once magnificent green spaces. However, archaeology doesn't just look for standing walls. Modern archaeological methods allow researchers to uncover subtle clues. Ghost outlines in the earth that whisper of past greenery. It's like forensic science for ancient landscapes. One crucial set of techniques involves geophysical surveys. Imagine walking across a seemingly empty, flat piece of ground, but beneath the surface, there might be subtle changes in the soil or buried structures. Ground-penetrating radar GPR sends radar pulses into the ground and measures the reflections, allowing archaeologists to detect buried features like compacted earth paths, former walls, or irrigation channels without digging. Magnetometry detects subtle variations in the Earth's magnetic field caused by buried features like former hearths, walls, or even highly disturbed soil from gardening. These methods can reveal the layout of a lost garden, the ghost plan of its beds, paths, and water systems. Sensory details the quiet whirring or beeping of survey equipment as it's pulled across the dry earth. The anticipation of seeing faint patterns emerge on a screen. The feeling of understanding that invisible history lies beneath your feet. Then there's soil analysis. This is where things get really detailed. Archaeologists collect soil samples from potential garden areas and analyze them in a laboratory. They look for specific indicators: higher organic content soil that was regularly enriched with compost or manure for gardening will have higher levels of organic matter than surrounding natural soil. Different pH levels. Constant irrigation or specific plant types can alter soil acidity or alkalinity. Microscopic plant remains. This is particularly exciting. Pollen grains palynology, phytoliths, tiny silica bodies from plant cells, and preserved seeds can be found in soil layers. By identifying these microscopic remains, archaeologists can determine what specific plants were growing in a particular area. Even if the plants themselves vanished long ago, finding clusters of specific pollen grains not native to the surrounding wild area, or a high concentration of cultivated plant seeds, is strong evidence of a garden. Sensory details the dry, dusty smell of ancient soil samples, the visual of meticulously sifting through dirt, the feel of tiny, almost imperceptible fragments under a microscope. Remnants of irrigation infrastructure provide direct physical evidence. While mud brick channels might erode, deeper dug canals might leave trenches that can be traced. The linings of wells or cistern stone. Fired clay might still be present underground. The bases of water-lifting devices like shadoofs or sakias might leave distinct impressions or features. Finding these remnants of ancient plumbing is like finding the arteries of a lost green oasis. Archaeologists also rely on historical texts and oral traditions as guides. Accounts from Arab travelers like Ibn Battuta, who visited Mali in the 14th century, mention lush gardens and sophisticated urban planning. These texts can pinpoint general locations or describe the types of plants. Local oral traditions and stories passed down through generations can also provide invaluable clues to areas of past human activity, including cultivation. Although the lush gardens of the Mali Empire are largely invisible today due to the perishable nature of their organic materials plants, mud brick channels, and subsequent environmental and human alterations. Modern archaeology utilizes sophisticated methods like geophysical surveys to detect buried layouts and extensive soil analysis, including microscopic plant remains, organic content, and pH levels to uncover subtle physical evidence of their past existence, revealing their likely extent and the types of plants cultivated. This is our mainstream historical fact. Detailing the scientific detective work. A quirky tidbit about unearthing lost gardens involves particularly surprising findings or challenging interpretations. Sometimes, archaeologists find tiny, preserved seeds of plants that were thought to be much later introductions to the region, indicating earlier cultivation. Or they might find unique patterns in the soil that defy immediate explanation, leading to years of careful study to determine if it's a forgotten garden bed or a natural anomaly. Imagine finding a tiny, ancient, perfectly preserved mango seed in soil where no mangoes grow today. There's joke number one. We found ancient pollen tastes like victory and also slightly dusty mango. Historians debate the conclusive nature of archaeological evidence alone in precisely determining the exact nature, aesthetic design, and full scale of these lost Malian gardens. Given that direct, intact garden features are rare. How much reliance must historians place on the often brief descriptions in historical accounts, or potentially fluid oral traditions when interpreting the subtle physical clues found in the ground? Is the picture we build primarily from hard archaeological data, or a complex synthesis of disparate sources? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, grappling with the limitations of the evidence and the need for careful inference. Unearthing the lost greenery of Mali is a testament to the power of modern archaeology, allowing us to glimpse vibrant ancient spaces where today there might only be dry earth. Joke number two. You dust off a shovel, just digging for history and possibly a very old, very green thumbprint. It's a painstaking but rewarding process, adding new layers to our understanding of the Mali Empire's sophistication. Joke number three. You look at a map showing where gardens might have been. So many potential lost plants. It's like finding ancient, invisible botanical secrets. You've learned how modern archaeology hints at the physical evidence of the Mali Empire's lost gardens. Piecing together clues from geophysical surveys and soil analysis, you've imagined the royal pleasure gardens for delight and the sustenance gardens for food and medicine, all sustained by ingenious water management and patient labor. Now, let's turn our attention to one specific, famous urban center of the Mali Empire, a city renowned not just for its wealth, but for its profound intellectual life, Timbuktu, and its potential academic gardens. Timbuktu, a major city of the Mali Empire, particularly flourishing during Mansa Musa's reign and beyond, was known across the medieval world not just as a hub for the gold and salt trade, but as a vibrant center of Islamic scholarship, learning, and vast libraries. It boasted numerous prominent universities and madrasas religious schools, such as the Sankora Mosque, which also served as a university, the Jingureber Mosque, and the Seydi Yahya Mosque. Thousands of students and scholars from across Africa and the wider Islamic world flocked to Timbuktu to study astronomy, mathematics, medicine, law, theology, and philosophy. Where there is scholarship, particularly in fields like medicine and natural history, there's often a need for practical resources and study sites. This leads to the intriguing idea of scholarly and botanical gardens connected to Timbuktu's famous universities and intellectual institutions. While direct, detailed accounts of these specific gardens are scarce. It's a plausible inference given the city's intellectual focus and the practical needs of its scholars. The purpose of such academic gardens would have been multifaceted. Primarily, they would have served as living laboratories for the study of botany and medicinal plants. Scholars, healers, and students interested in pharmacology would cultivate a wide range of herbs, trees, and other plants, studying their properties, their growth cycles, and their applications in traditional medicine. Imagine scholars walking through carefully tended beds, examining leaves, noting growth, and perhaps collecting samples for further study in their laboratories. Sensory details the smell of various herbs, some pungent, some sweet, mingling in the garden air, the visual of plants neatly arranged in beds, perhaps with markers indicating their properties, the quiet murmur of scholarly discussion. These gardens might also have served for experimentation and plant propagation. Scholars could test different cultivation techniques, Observe the effects of various soil types or watering methods, and try to propagate new or rare species acquired through trade or exploration. They could be places for teaching students about plant classification, agronomy, and the preparation of remedies. Beyond their direct scholarly function, they could still contribute to resource provision, supplying medicinal plants to the scholarly community and perhaps specific food crops for demonstration or research purposes. They might also serve as peaceful, contemplative spaces for scholars and students, offering a quiet retreat from the bustling city and crowded lecture halls. The resources needed to sustain these academic gardens would be similar to other Malian gardens, meticulous water management drawing from the Niger River via canals, or from wells. Timbuktu notably relied on wells, and the skilled labor of dedicated gardeners as explored in Section 8T, who would work under the guidance of scholars to cultivate the specific flora required for academic study. Timbuktu, a major urban center of the Mali Empire, was renowned globally as a vibrant hub of Islamic scholarship. Learning and extensive libraries, its prominent universities and scholarly institutions, likely maintained gardens that served not only for general sustenance, but also potentially as dedicated sites for the study of botany, medicinal plants, and general horticultural experimentation, supporting its intellectual life. This is our mainstream historical fact, highlighting the scholarly gardens. A quirky tidbit about Timbuktu's scholarly greenery involves specific, unusual plants that might have been cultivated for their unique properties beyond common food or medicine, perhaps used in alchemy, for making specific dyes or inks, or for esoteric philosophical study. Imagine a scholar in Timbuktu carefully tending a plant whose sap was believed to hold properties useful for ink production, or in a complex alchemical formula. There's joke number one, Professor. This plant seems rather mundane. Yes, but its roots, when ground and mixed with moonlight, are said to solve algebraic equations or something. Historians debate the specific function and formal organization of gardens within Timbuktu's scholarly institutions. Was there clear evidence for formalized botanical gardens in the modern sense, dedicated collections for scientific study and classification in Timbuktu? Or were they primarily functional cultivation plots for medicinal and practical plants, with their scholarly aspect deriving from their use by scholars and healers? Rather than being organized as dedicated botanical study sites, this is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to discern the precise nature and formality of these academic gardens. Timbuktu's academic gardens, even if inferred, represent a remarkable blend of practical knowledge, scientific inquiry, and environmental management. Joke number two. You imagine a Timbuktu scholar complaining, "My new thesis on the medicinal properties of desert weeds is almost done. If only the slugs would cooperate with my fieldwork." They showcase the comprehensive intellectual pursuits that flourished in this great West African city. Joke number three. You picture a garden tour. And here, we have the rare argument-ending herb, very popular in the philosophy department. You've learned how modern archaeology hints at the physical evidence of the Mali Empire's lost gardens. You've imagined the royal pleasure gardens and sustenance plots, even the potential scholarly gardens of Timbuktu, all sustained by ingenious water management and the patient labor of skilled gardeners. But these gardens were not entirely insular, just as goods and ideas traveled along the trans-Saharan trade routes. So too did plants and horticultural knowledge. This brings us to diplomatic plant exchange, how greenery and growing techniques spread through imperial interactions. Imagine a world where empires, even those separated by vast deserts and thousands of miles, maintained diplomatic relations. Rulers exchanged ambassadors, sent envoys, and, crucially, offered gifts. These gifts were not just gold, salt, or fine textiles sometimes. They included living plants, seeds, or detailed knowledge about cultivation. This was a form of biological and horticultural diplomacy, aiming to impress, strengthen ties, or acquire useful new species. The vast trans-Saharan trade routes, which brought immense wealth to the Mali Empire. Also served as pathways for this exchange, merchants and scholars, moving between West Africa, North Africa, and the Middle East, carried not just goods but also valuable knowledge. Pilgrims. Like Mansa Musa on his famous Hajj, a callback to Section 2, would have observed plants and gardening practices in the lands they visited and potentially brought back seeds or ideas. What kinds of plants and knowledge might have traveled? Ornamental plants were certainly prized for pleasure gardens, enhancing the aesthetic appeal of royal and noble estates. A rare or exotic flowering shrub from the Mediterranean, or a unique shade tree from a distant oasis, could be a highly valued diplomatic gift. Food crops could also be exchanged. New varieties of grains, fruits, or vegetables that were more drought-resistant, offered higher yields, or provided different flavors could be incredibly valuable for agricultural development. Medicinal plants were always in demand. Acquiring new herbs with unique healing properties, or learning about traditional remedies from other regions was a significant benefit for imperial health. Even specific trees for shade or timber, adapted to arid conditions, could be introduced to new regions to improve urban environments. This exchange wasn't just about the plants themselves, it also involved horticultural knowledge. How do you grow this delicate flowering plant in a hot climate? What kind of soil does this fruit tree need? What irrigation techniques work best for this new crop? This knowledge passed through observation, discussion, or perhaps even written accounts for literate cultures was as valuable as the plants themselves. The purpose of this exchange was multi-layered. It strengthened diplomatic ties between rulers, signaling respect and generosity. It allowed rulers to impress each other with the unique flora cultivated in their gardens. It enriched imperial and noble gardens, making them more diverse and prestigious. And crucially, it allowed for the acquisition of useful new species that could enhance local food supplies, provide new medicines, or offer new resources. Mansa Musa's immense international connections, solidified during his Hajj and through subsequent diplomatic interactions, would have significantly facilitated such exchanges. His fame, wealth, and interest in scholarship would have attracted plants and knowledge from across the Islamic world. Imperial interactions in medieval West Africa, particularly those influenced by the extensive trans-Saharan trade networks and high-profile events like Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca, facilitated the exchange of plants and horticultural knowledge between the Mali Empire and regions like North Africa and the Middle East, thereby enriching imperial gardens, diversifying agricultural practices, and enhancing botanical understanding. This is our mainstream historical fact, highlighting the pathways of biological and horticultural diplomacy. A quirky tidbit about plant diplomacy involves specific, perhaps unusual, plants offered as diplomatic gifts, or anecdotes about a plant struggling or thriving in a new imperial garden. Some sources hint at rulers sending very specific rare plants with unique scents or strange medicinal properties as gifts. Rather than just common food crops, imagine a ruler sending a plant that was rumored to grant wisdom, or one whose flowers only bloomed under a specific moon. There's joke number 1. Your Majesty, I bring a gift from the Sultan of Cairo. It's a shrub, apparently. It makes excellent tea, don't let it die. Or it's an act of war. Historians debate the relative significance of formal diplomatic exchange versus broader trade networks and general migration in the transmission of horticultural knowledge and plant species to and from the Mali Empire. Was it mainly through official ambassadors and state gifts that new plants arrived, or was the slower, less formal movement of seeds and knowledge by ordinary merchants, pilgrims, and migrating communities more impactful in the long run? Historians also debate how successful efforts were to introduce and sustain truly non-native or exotic plant species in the challenging Sahel and savanna climate. Was it primarily symbolic gestures? Or did new species genuinely become integrated into Malian gardens and agriculture? This is our open scholarly debate phrase while trying to understand the pathways and effectiveness of ancient botanical globalization. Diplomatic plant exchange represents a fascinating aspect of imperial interactions, showing how even living flora could serve as instruments of power, prestige, and cultural connection. Joke number 2. You inspect a new plant in the garden. This one's from Persia, looks very demanding. Hope it likes the local water management. It enriched the gardens of the Mali Empire, making them showcases of diverse flora and knowledge. Joke number 3. You imagine a palace gardener's nightmare. Another diplomatic plant gift. What is this thing? It needs full sun, no water, and only blooms on Tuesdays. You've learned how plants and horticultural knowledge traveled through imperial interactions, enriching the gardens of the Mali Empire. But central to the flourishing of these magnificent green spaces was the active support and vision of its most famous ruler. We've seen Mansa Musa's legendary wealth and his broader patronage of mosques, universities, and grand architecture. Now, let's focus on his specific direct involvement in garden projects, royal support for gardens. Mansa Musa's immense wealth, primarily from controlling the trans-Saharan gold and salt trade, provided the unprecedented resources necessary for grand-scale projects. While he is most famous for his golden pilgrimage and the building of mosques and universities, his patronage extended to cultivating beauty and utility within his imperial compounds and urban centers, directly supporting the creation and maintenance of vast and diverse gardens. His support was not merely passive approval, it was active commissioning and funding, maintaining lush gardens in the challenging savanna and Sahel climate. As we've explored, required immense investment in water infrastructure, canals, wells, lifting devices, and constant skilled labor gardeners. Mansa Musa's ability to command these resources was crucial. He could allocate significant portions of imperial revenue and labor to these projects, ensuring their scale and long-term viability. Why would such a powerful and wealthy ruler dedicate resources to gardens? Prestige and symbolism were certainly key. Grand, flourishing gardens in a challenging climate were a highly visible display of Mansa Musa's immense wealth, power, and command over nature itself. They demonstrated his ability to transform the landscape, to bring life and beauty to arid regions. A tangible manifestation of imperial prosperity and control, offering a cool, fragrant retreat to an honored guest within his palace gardens was a profound statement of his magnificence. Religious devotion also played a role. In Islamic tradition, gardens, particularly those with flowing water, are often seen as reflections or earthly representations of paradise. For a devout Muslim ruler like Mansa Musa, creating and maintaining such gardens could be an act of piety, a way to reflect divine beauty on earth. Practicality was also a factor. As we discussed, gardens provided food, fruits, vegetables, grains, and medicinal plants for the court and elite, supplementing broader agriculture and ensuring a diverse, reliable food supply. They also offered crucial shade and a cool respite from the intense West African heat, enhancing the comfort and well-being of the imperial family and officials. Scholarly interest may also have driven patronage, with Timbuktu becoming a center of learning, supporting gardens that cultivated diverse flora, including medicinal plants, would aid botanical and medical scholarship, aligning with Mansa Musa's broader support for intellectual pursuits. His patronage would have manifested in various ways, commissioning skilled landscape architects if such specific roles existed, or master gardeners with design knowledge, funding the construction of elaborate water systems, wells, cisterns, canals, and ensuring a constant supply of specialized gardeners to tend the plants. He might even have personally overseen aspects of these projects, or at least regularly visited and enjoyed them. While direct archaeological evidence specifically linking Mansa Musa's personal command to every single garden is scarce due to their perishable nature, historical accounts of his immense wealth and his known patronage of other architectural and scholarly projects strongly infer his active support for these grand green spaces within his imperial compounds, particularly at his capital of Niani, and potentially in other major cities like Timbuktu. Mansa Musa, the famously wealthy 14th century emperor of Mali, actively supported and directly patronized the creation and meticulous maintenance of grand gardens within his imperial compounds and key urban centers, leveraging his immense resources. This patronage enhanced imperial prestige and symbolized his power, while also providing practical resources like food and medicine, reflecting his piety and supporting scholarly interest. This is our mainstream historical fact, solidifying his role. A quirky tidbit about Mansa Musa's personal involvement in gardens involves specific anecdotes or requests he might have made. Some accounts, drawing from oral tradition or later chronicles, might suggest he had a particularly favored type of exotic fruit tree he longed to cultivate, or that he took personal interest in the growth of certain rare medicinal plants. Imagine him walking through his gardens, gently inspecting a new sapling, and asking his head gardener for an update on a particularly finicky imported flower. There's joke number one, Your Majesty. The royal rosebush is thriving, unlike the royal accountant, who seems to be wilting. Historians debate the precise scale of Mansa Musa's personal involvement in or commissioning of specific garden projects. Beyond his general patronage of architecture and scholarship, was his direct garden patronage primarily for personal enjoyment and the private use of the imperial family? Or was it predominantly a strategic political display, designed to impress foreign dignitaries and reinforce his rule's legitimacy through visible control over nature and resources? Did he commission purely ornamental gardens? Or were most of his commissioned gardens multi-purpose, blending aesthetics with practical utility? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, delving into the nuances of his horticultural motivations. Mansa Musa's royal support was the engine that brought the Mali Empire's gardens to life. Joke number two. You picture him signing off on a massive budget for a new irrigation system. More water for my roses, and also, I suppose, for the peasants' crops. His immense wealth and vision transformed challenging landscapes into flourishing havens, green jewels reflecting the golden age of his empire. Joke number three. You imagine a foreign ambassador seeing his gardens. The Sultan of Cairo has fountains. Mansa Musa has an entire forest, carefully watered by magic or extremely expensive engineers. You've learned about Mansa Musa's direct patronage, how his immense wealth and vision brought grand gardens to life in the Mali Empire's compounds and cities, transforming challenging landscapes into verdant havens. But all things, even mighty empires and their magnificent creations, eventually face decline. The very nature of these gardens, so dependent on constant human intervention, meant that their existence was inherently fragile. So how did these green jewels, once flourishing symbols of imperial power, eventually fade from view? This brings us to the environmental and historical reasons for their disappearance. The lost aspect of these gardens is crucial. Unlike monumental stone structures that endure for millennia like the walls of Great Zimbabwe. For instance, gardens, particularly those in semi-arid climates, are inherently perishable. Their primary components, plants, soil, mud brick irrigation channels, wooden structures, living water systems, are organic and fragile. If constant maintenance ceases, nature quickly reclaims them. Centuries of environmental change, combined with historical shifts, gradually erased most direct, visible evidence of these once thriving green spaces. One major set of reasons for their disappearance lies in environmental factors. Desertification. The natural southward creep of the Sahara Desert, a long-term process, gradually encroached upon the northern reaches of the Mali Empire's territory, making water scarcer and the climate harsher for sustained agriculture and gardening. Climate shifts over centuries. Subtle long-term shifts in rainfall patterns could have occurred, leading to more prolonged or frequent droughts. This would have placed immense stress on water sources like wells and rivers, making it increasingly difficult to sustain large-scale irrigation and lush gardens. River changes. The Niger River itself, though mighty, could experience shifts in its course over long periods, or changes in its annual flood cycles. Such changes could affect the accessibility of water for irrigation, or lead to damage to existing canal systems from unusual floods or prolonged drying. Sensory details the visual of vibrant green slowly turning to dusty brown, the feel of dry, cracking earth, the smell of pervasive dust replacing the scent of blossoms, the sound of wind whistling over dry land where water once trickled. Compounding these natural pressures were equally significant historical and political factors linked to the decline of the Mali Empire itself. Decline of the Mali Empire. After Mansa Musa's golden age, the empire faced internal strife, succession disputes, and eventually, external invasions, first from the Songhai Empire, and later, dramatically, from a Moroccan invasion in the late 16th century that devastated major cities like Timbuktu. This political instability and eventual collapse meant a loss of centralized control and the immense resources that once sustained grand projects. Loss of centralized power and resources. Maintaining intricate irrigation systems and large teams of gardeners required a strong, stable central government with vast wealth. As the empire weakened and its gold-salt trade might have been disrupted, the ability to command the necessary labor and fund the constant upkeep for these gardens dwindled. The resources were simply no longer available to fight the relentless environmental pressures. Neglect. When rulers' attention shifted to warfare, political survival, or trade disruption, the meticulous upkeep of gardens likely became a lower priority. If the complex irrigation systems were not regularly maintained, cleared of silt, repaired, they would quickly fall into disuse and decay, leading to the rapid demise of the gardens they supplied. The consequence was a gradual fading. The plants, deprived of constant water, would wilt and die. Mud brick channels would erode and silt up. Wells might fall into disrepair or dry up. The sand, ever present in the Sahel, would encroach, slowly burying the remnants of once vibrant beds. Human memory, without the physical presence of the gardens, would also fade, leaving only hints in oral traditions or brief written accounts. The grand gardens of the Mali Empire, highly dependent on continuous human intervention and complex water management in their challenging semi-arid environment, eventually faded from visible existence due to a combination of long-term environmental factors such as desertification, climate shifts impacting rainfall, and changes in river courses, and significant historical political factors, including the decline and eventual collapse of the Mali Empire. The loss of centralized power and resources for maintenance, and subsequent neglect. This is our mainstream historical fact, explaining their disappearance. A quirky tidbit about their disappearance involves specific natural events or strange beliefs about their loss. Some legends or anecdotal accounts hint at unusually severe droughts or massive floods that might have delivered devastating blows to specific garden complexes. There are also speculative beliefs that the gardens withered when a particular line of chiefs lost power, as if their magical influence over fertility vanished. Imagine a legendary gardener who, upon hearing of the empire's decline, sighed and said, "Well, there go the roses. They only bloom for a true Mansa." There's joke number one. My beautiful garden. It just got bored and left. Or maybe it was that particularly dry century. Historians debate the primary driver of their disappearance. Was it the long-term environmental factors, natural climate change, and the inexorable advance of the desert that ultimately made them unsustainable, regardless of political will? Or was it the political and economic decline of the Mali Empire, leading to the lack of maintenance and subsequent neglect? That was the dominant factor in their demise, with the environment simply taking advantage of human withdrawal. This is our open scholarly debate phrase, trying to pinpoint the most significant factor in the garden's tragic disappearance. The disappearance of these gardens, a testament to the fragile nature of human creations in challenging environments. highlights the impermanence of even grand imperial projects when the resources and will to maintain them dwindle. Joke number 2. You look at a dry patch. This used to be the emperor's private herb garden. Now it's just dirt. And possibly a very confused scorpion. Their loss underscores the passage of time and the changing fortunes of empires. Joke number 3. You imagine trying to explain the vanishing gardens to someone who lives in a lush climate. So, they just ungrew themselves. Very peculiar. You've explored the complex environmental and historical reasons for the disappearance of the Mali Empire's grand gardens. They faded from view, consumed by encroaching sand, decaying organic materials, and shifting political fortunes, leaving behind little direct, visible evidence. But the very idea of these lush oases, flourishing in the savannah and Sahel, continues to fascinate. And so, modern researchers are actively engaged in a dedicated search for green, attempting to unearth or reconstruct these once magnificent gardens. The motivation for this modern search is profound. It's about understanding the full sophistication of the Mali Empire, proving that its wealth wasn't just gold and salt, but also extended to complex urban planning, advanced water management, and sophisticated horticulture. It's about adding a crucial layer to the narrative of pre-colonial West African history, challenging persistent stereotypes about the region's past. It's about using science to bring vanished beauty back to life. At least in our understanding. The challenge, as we know, is that gardens are ephemeral. Unlike stone monuments, they don't leave grand ruins. So, archaeologists and historians employ a variety of advanced, often subtle, techniques to find these lost green spaces. One key set of tools involves remote sensing and geophysical surveys. Researchers use technologies like satellite imagery with specialized sensors to detect subtle patterns on the ground that might indicate ancient irrigation channels, former paths, or outlines of buried structures. Drones equipped with cameras can provide high-resolution aerial views on the ground. Geophysical methods like ground-penetrating radar, GPR, or magnetometry, which we briefly touched on earlier, are crucial. These tools allow archaeologists to scan beneath the surface without digging, revealing the ghost outlines of buried walls, water channels, planting beds, or former garden features that might have been part of a planned layout. Imagine sending a radar pulse into the seemingly empty earth and seeing the faint, ghostly blueprint of an ancient garden emerge on a screen. Sensory details the quiet hum of survey equipment, the dry, dusty feel of the ground where work is being done, the visual of faint, almost invisible, patterns appearing on a screen. Then there's the meticulous work of detailed soil analysis. This goes beyond just looking for buried structures. Soil samples are taken from potential garden areas and analyzed for specific chemical and biological markers, higher concentrations of organic matter, specific nutrient levels like phosphates from past fertilization, or unusual pH levels can indicate soil that was consistently cultivated and irrigated. Crucially, microscopic plant remains, preserved pollen grains palynology, phytoliths, tiny silica structures from plant cells, and ancient seeds can be identified in soil layers. By identifying these microscopic clues, archaeologists can determine exactly what types of plants were growing in a specific area, even if those plants vanished centuries ago. Finding pollen from cultivated fruit trees in a spot where today there's only dry scrub is a powerful piece of evidence. Sensory details the dry, earthy smell of soil samples, the visual of tiny specks under a microscope, the intellectual satisfaction of discerning invisible botanical history. Researchers also meticulously reinterpret historical texts written by travelers like Ibn Battuta, looking for subtle clues or more detailed descriptions of urban greenery or specific plants that might now guide an archaeological survey. Oral traditions passed down through local communities can also provide invaluable insights into past land use or the location of forgotten features. Sometimes, the search involves experimental archaeology, attempting to recreate traditional Malian gardening and irrigation methods on a small scale today to understand their feasibility and the types of traces they would leave. This practical experimentation helps validate hypotheses drawn from archaeological finds and historical texts. Modern archaeological and historical research efforts are actively engaged in unearthing and reconstructing evidence of the Mali Empire's lost gardens. Utilizing a combination of advanced techniques like remote sensing, geophysical surveys to detect buried layouts, and detailed soil analysis including microscopic plant remains and chemical markers. These scientific findings are complemented by meticulous reinterpretation of historical texts and engagement with local oral traditions to paint a fuller picture of these vanished green spaces. This is our mainstream historical fact. Outlining the diverse methods used, a quirky tidbit about this modern search involves particularly unexpected findings or hypotheses. Sometimes, subtle anomalies detected by remote sensing might initially be misinterpreted as natural geological features, only later to be re-examined and identified as potential ancient irrigation channels or garden walls, highlighting the challenge of interpretation or a specific type of ancient pottery shard, previously thought to be just domestic refuse, might be found to have been used in a unique way for plant propagation. Hinting at a gardening technique, imagine finding a faint soil signature that, after years of analysis, turns out to be the ghost of Mansa Musa's favorite rose garden. There's joke number one. We thought it was just a strange dirt patch. Turns out, it's where they grew the emperor's magic beans. Historians and archaeologists debate the feasibility and overall accuracy of truly reconstructing the full appearance. Ecological function and aesthetic design of these lost Malian gardens based on the available fragmentary evidence. Given that direct, intact gardens are rare finds, how much can modern scientific inference truly capture the complexity and vibrancy of the ancient gardens, versus it remaining a hypothesis built on subtle clues? Are we relying too heavily on sometimes brief textual accounts to fill in the gaps in the archaeological record? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, grappling with the limits of what can be known about vanished green spaces. The modern search for Mali's lost gardens is a testament to the dedication of researchers to uncover the full story of pre-colonial African empires. Joke number 2. You watch an archaeologist carefully sifting dirt, just looking for a very old, very green thumbprint. It's a painstaking process, piecing together fragments of evidence to bring a vibrant, lost history back to life in our understanding. Joke number 3. You imagine explaining your work to a modern gardener? Yes, I study ancient plants. No, I don't actually grow them. I just dig up their microscopic dust. You've explored the challenging work of modern archaeology, unearthing subtle clues to reconstruct the Mali Empire's lost gardens. Using everything from remote sensing to microscopic pollen analysis, this painstaking search seeks to bring a vital part of West African history back into focus. And as we conclude our journey, it's time to reflect on what these lost gardens and the effort to uncover them tell us about Mali's enduring green legacy and the significance of planned green spaces in West African empires. The gardens of the Mali Empire were far more than just pleasantries or functional plots. They were profound statements. Their existence in a challenging environment, the Savannah and Sahel, with their dry seasons and demanding climate, speaks volumes about the Malians' ingenuity, their advanced understanding of water management, and their capacity for sophisticated urban planning and horticulture. These were not primitive attempts at agriculture. They were meticulously planned and executed green oases, requiring immense resources and highly skilled labor. Their presence directly challenges outdated narratives that sometimes portray ancient West African empires solely in terms of wealth gold, salt, or military might, without fully acknowledging their intellectual, aesthetic, and scientific achievements. The gardens demonstrate a deep connection to nature, an ability to adapt and transform the environment, and a sophisticated appreciation for both beauty and utility. They were living symbols of imperial power, wealth, and a command over resources, transforming the landscape itself into a verdant testament to the empire's sophistication. They also represent a crucial element of environmental knowledge and stewardship. The successful cultivation of diverse flora, adapted to local conditions and sustained by ingenious irrigation, shows a deep understanding of local ecosystems and agricultural practices. This traditional ecological knowledge, manifested in the gardens, is an important part of Africa's history of innovation. The grand gardens of the Mali Empire, though largely vanished today, represent an enduring and significant green legacy in West African history. They stand as powerful evidence of the empire's advanced understanding of water management, sophisticated urban planning, and complex horticultural practices. Challenging simplistic narratives about the region's past and highlighting African ingenuity in adapting to and transforming challenging environments for both utility and aesthetic pleasure. This is our mainstream historical fact. Summarizing their overall significance, the story of Mali's Lost Gardens reminds us that history is not just about battles and kings, it's also about daily life, ingenuity, and the human desire to create beauty and sustenance in challenging environments. It adds a vibrant green layer to the existing narrative of the Mali Empire. A quirky tidbit about their enduring legacy involves specific trees or plant species that are still revered in the Sahel and Savannah today, perhaps with local legends linking them to ancient rulers or sacred sites, or even very old irrigation techniques still in use in isolated communities. These small, living connections can sometimes be seen as direct echoes of the lost imperial gardens, silent witnesses to a continuity of horticultural knowledge or a reverence for green spaces. Imagine visiting a small village today and finding a peculiar ancient well system that local elders say was inspired by the great gardens of Mansa Musa. There's joke number one. This particular strain of mango tree legend says it was personally watered by Mansa Musa's great-great-great-great-great-grand gardener. Historians debate the extent to which the horticultural knowledge and practices demonstrated in the Mali Empire's imperial gardens influenced or were passed down to later West African societies or contributed to broader agricultural practices in the region. Did the sophisticated techniques used in these elite gardens remain largely confined to the imperial court? Or did they diffuse more widely to influence common agricultural methods or inspire similar smaller-scale projects in subsequent centuries? Scholars also debate the overall impact of these gardens on the environment. Were they truly sustainable long-term achievements? Or did their maintenance, however ingenious, contribute to some degree of localized resource depletion or environmental change in the long run? This is our open scholarly debate phrase, probing the long-term environmental and cultural ripples of Mali's green history. Mali's enduring green legacy is a testament to the fact that magnificent civilizations leave behind traces not just in stone or gold, but also in their relationship with nature, their ingenuity in cultivation, and their ability to create oases of life and beauty. Joke number two. You picture a modern landscape architect seeing an ancient garden plan. They had that level of irrigation without computers. I need a nap. It encourages us to look beyond the obvious monuments and to seek the hidden, vital stories etched into the very landscape. Joke number three. You imagine the gardens whispering, "We were here, we were beautiful, and we were very, very thirsty. And now, as our journey through the lost gardens of the Mali Empire with Mansa Musa comes to a close, you can let the images of vast savannas and hidden oases fade. The sounds of trickling water and diligent gardeners are quieting. The smells of fragrant blossoms and rich earth are softening. You can let go of the dry heat and the intricate irrigation systems. All the history, the details, the magnificent green jewels are settling down for the night. They are safe now, remembered, appreciated as a vibrant, green chapter in the world's shared story of ingenuity and beauty. Peace, quiet. The gardens are at rest. The desert is still, breathing easy, letting go, drifting. End of script. Sweet dreams.